there's no immediate fix for that, right? So if the government blocks immigration expansion, and you have a declining birth rate, and you don't innovate, exactly how are you going to fill jobs and keep your economy running? Right? Simple answer, you're not, right? Do you believe the government doesn't understand this? So the previous administration, the person in charge of promoting, expanding the birth rate is who? A 59-year-old man who doesn't have any kids. Sorry, even by accident, some of you will laugh at me, but it's true. Even by accident, you pick a better candidate, right? And who hired that person? The president, who's about the same age, who's female, but also doesn't have kids. Okay. Anyone want to place a bet that problem's going to be solved anytime soon? Ridiculous, right? Any volunteer? Who would you hire to help understand why the birth rate is so low? Anyone have a better idea? Maybe a female who's in the age range where they can still have kids and doesn't have kids, right? That might give you a better clue as to why you have the issue, right? Unbelievable, right? A problem that takes 20 plus years to solve, no sense of urgency to fix it, right? And the solution from these two geniuses, okay, I give everyone, depending where you live, up to 5,000 NT a month. You all live here now, so you understand that's not a lot of money, right? Most of you probably don't have children, but you think, what are you going to do with 5,000 NT? Buy 2 boxes of diapers? What? Is that going to change someone's, that's the reason people aren't having kids, is because 5,000 NT a month? Maybe not, right? Even double or triple that, maybe that's not the reason, right? Maybe there's not reliable daycare, or maybe people don't like the basic education system here. But it's not because 5,000 NT a month, right? So this is what happens when you don't put the right people in the right seats. Why would you have any expectation that people in their 50s and 60s who don't have kids would help you solve this problem? Right? Be like the last, well, except for a 60 and 70-year-old who don't have kids, be the last people you'd hire to solve this problem. Right? If you had your own company, you wouldn't hire them as consultants. Right? But we do it in companies, we do it in government. So when you switch to an agile organization, you have some benefits which you can see can help you sustain for the long run and allow you to operate overseas. This is a famous management book actually released in 2001. At the time, I didn't really understand why he released this. But today, as things got more complicated, you really understand. The wrong people off the bus are the obstacles. The right people in the right seats is what drives efficiency and innovation. Right? That's what engages people and gives the company scalability, which means they can make more money. And if I'm working for the right company, I'm not just making the money and putting it in the bank, I'm putting it back into society. Right? Which our company is very good at. We own a hospital, 2 schools. And I'm actually leading a project with our hospital and one of our retail groups to reduce the chronic illness in the country, especially type 2 diabetes first. Because we spent 28 billion NT last year just on type 2 diabetes, and it's about 62% reversible. So in a country with a shrinking population, if I can save that kind of cost in the healthcare system and move it to the education system and build out a couple of nicer roads and make the MRT system connect to the high-speed rail down here. Make life easier for a lot of people, right? And I wouldn't have to raise anyone's taxes, right? And people would be healthier, right? So there's no reason not to do it, right? But it takes a private company to do that. But only because we have a project leader who went to medical school and happened to own a hospital and a retail store. I can put together a solution that's kind of a turnkey solution. Right? And because we're a small country, I can move stuff to a farm to any retail outlet in the country in about 4 hours. Which means I can make all my domestic produce organic. Because the shelf life is not an issue here, because the transportation cycle is very small. Right? The US, India, Russia, China, I try to put organic food in my supply chain is concentrated, not in the center of the country. 30–40% of the food will be bad by the time it gets to the furthest destination. But here it's very practical to do that. So we'll have a business model that we can license or grant to other countries to copy.
Maybe we can take a 10-minute break and come back. Yeah.
Nobody takes any cookies, you fail the course.
So let's take 10-minute break, and if you want to take some cookie, it's in front.